Good evening, welcome, and thank you for joining us tonight for the Scottsdale Unified School District Governing Board Candidate Forum, brought to you by the Scottsdale Parent Council and the Scottsdale Progress.
And I'm Paul Mariniak, the executive editor of the Scottsdale Progress, and welcome to our candidates and our audience.
And my name is Brian Novak. I am the Vice President of Advocacy for the Scottsdale Parent Council. Paul and I will serve as the moderators for the forum. We look forward to meeting the candidates and want to remind everyone that we will be recording tonight's forum.
And before we begin, we will lay out some ground rules for today's forum. Each candidate will have 2 minutes to give us an opening statement and then a minute to give a closing statement. We will then ask each candidate questions after their openings that have been submitted in advance by the public.
Candidates will have 1 minute to respond to the question, and we will alternate the order to allow each candidate an opportunity to answer first. Upon request and at the discretion of the moderators, a 30-second rebuttal may be allowed if a candidate is directly addressed by another.
And timing with this virtual forum is critical, so we remind the candidates to respect the timeframes for responses. And we will provide a time warning. And if you exceed your response time, your microphone will be muted.
Finally, as Paul said, at the conclusion of the questions, we will offer a 1 minute closing statement to each candidate. And now let's meet the candidates and hear those opening statements. We'll begin in alphabetical order by last name: Mary Gaudio, Andrea Keck, and Rob Valls. Mary Gaudio, you may give your opening statement.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for tuning in to this very important forum with this very important race. My name is Mary Gaudio. I am a Phoenix native. I was born and raised in Phoenix on the West Valley. My mother was widowed when my father died at I was age 8. She raised 4 of us on her own. I was the youngest of 4 children. We really struggled financially, and the education that I got from my neighborhood public schools lifted us from poverty. And so my own personal experience really informs my belief that every child can be, their life can be completely altered by education. And it's a great equalizer in our society. So I am married. I have 2 adult children. I've been married to my husband, Joe, for 30 years. We live in Paradise Valley. I am retired. We lived in North Texas for about 15 years, where we raised our children. That is where I actually got my all of my experience in public education in service to my community schools while my children were in Plano and Allen ISD in North Texas. For 14 years, I was a fixture at the schools. I was a PTA president and substitute teacher and a community leader in Allen, Texas. When we returned back to the Valley, I jumped right back in and started mentoring with New Pathways for Youth. It is an organization that's fantastic and is very much focused on kids with adverse childhood experiences. And so I am running to really make a difference, a positive impact in our community, and lend my experience as a PTA person. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary.
Andrea Keck, you may give your opening statement.
Well, thank you to both the Progress and the Scottsdale Parent Council. I see that some of the candidates did not come, and I note that they didn't meet with the teachers either. I really don't know how a person can run for the board of a school district and not be willing to meet with parents and teachers. If elected, a board member has the responsibility to represent everyone. I can't just choose to associate with people that think like I do. We might not agree on everything, but I certainly respect you enough to be here. My focus is on 4 things. First, academics. SUSD's #1 job is to educate. Our results are unacceptable. 40% of our 3rd through 8th graders are not proficient in English or math. We now rank 6th of 10 suburban districts in 10th grade math. We must do better. Equally important, school safety. In May, a student was inside Arcadia High School with a gun. We must secure our campuses to keep everyone safe. Parental rights and transparency. Time spent on race, gender, sexuality, social justice, equity is negatively impacting academic results. Schools assist, but cannot supersede parents in raising children. Parents have a right to know all that their minor children are experiencing. And finally, fiscal responsibility. Prioritize spending on core subjects. Reduce overhead and waste. Spend your tax dollars wisely. I am the most qualified person in this race, with nearly 30 years of substantive experience in both business and education. I managed $100 to $300 million businesses for Kraft Foods.
Thank you.
So I know how to run a large organization. I've spent 25 years in the educational sector. I'm happy to be here tonight.
Thank you. Rob Valls, you may give your opening statement.
Thanks, Brian. I'm Rob Valls, and I was born and raised in the Valley. I attended Hopi, Ingleside, and graduated from Arcadia. My dad was a teacher, and my mom raised 4 of us and was the PTA president at Hopi for a little while. My wife Renee and I are proud parents of Andy, a graduate of Desert Mountain, who's currently attending the SCORE program at Arcadia. I graduated from NAU, and I did my graduate work at the University of Texas. I started my career in advertising, and for the past 20 years, I've been an executive in healthcare, and I work for a national radiology group as a senior vice president. I was a district substitute for 2 years. I was recently elected board president for the Arizona Center for Disability Law, a public interest law firm representing disabled throughout Arizona. This past year, I've served on 2 Scottsdale Parent Council committees, and I currently sit on the site council at Desert Mountain High School. I'm a Save Our Schools Arizona Public School Proud candidate, a Moms Demand Action Gun Sentence candidate, where we provide actionable plans to keep our school campuses safe and gun-free. I was recently named one of the 2 recommended board candidates by the Scottsdale Education Association. Again, thank you for hosting us. I appreciate the candidates that chose to be here tonight to address our district parents, and I look forward to your questions. Thank you.
Thank you. And now for our questions and your answers. What makes you qualified to serve on the governing board? And we'll start with Andrea, and then go to Mary, and then go to Rob. Andrea?
Well, as I mentioned, I have both sides of the coin. I am a corporate person by training. Initially, I was a banker with BMO Harris Bank in Chicago, but I spent the bulk of my career as a brand manager for Kraft Foods and the NutraSweet Company, running $200, $300 million businesses. So I understand how to run large organizations. But I also have 25 years of substantive experience in education. I spent 9 years working at the Pappas schools in Central Phoenix, whose entire enrollment consists of homeless children. I was on the board of Boys Hope, Girls Hope of Arizona for 7 years. I was a member of ABEC, a coalition between business and education to try to improve public school system in in Scottsdale. I have gifted and special ed experience, and I have mentored more at-risk Hispanic and African-American students than I can count.
Thank you so much, Andrea.
Mary?
Hello. Okay, so I think the first qualification should be somebody who believes in public education and wants the best for every student in our school district. I bring professional experience as an advertising executive, that I was an account manager for 10 years before having children. I have 14 years of service in the classroom as a volunteer. I led PTAs and served on boards of PTAs for 14 years. I also led community organizations, Young Men's Service League in Allen, Texas. I was the president for 2 years. And through that, I have a proven track record of working in collaboration with families, with teachers and administrators to support student learning and academic growth in public schools. I listen, I make thoughtful decisions, and I understand those impacts of those decisions that they have on students and families.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Rob?
Sorry, muted. I worked in health. I've worked in healthcare for the past 20 years in critical care, where we deliver emergent radiology services to emergency rooms around the country. You don't have the opportunity to make mistakes there. People die. And so I take that part of my life very seriously. And I translate that over to how serious it is to deal with the education of our kids. I'm the father of a special needs child. And I've, for the past number of years, have worked through the Scottsdale district to try and fight for my son and other kids to make sure that they can get the education that they need and make sure that the district complies with federal law. And that's, taken me into being the board president of the Arizona Center for Disability Law, where I am working every day to make sure our disabled youth and adults get the care that they need, get the respect that they need, and that companies and school districts comply with federal law.
Thank you. Thank you, Rob. Our next question: what are your top 3 priorities for SUSD? For this one, we're going to start with you, Mary.
My top priority is teacher retention and recruitment. We need to make sure, in order to move the bar at all in academic proficiency, we need to make sure that we are attracting and retaining top talent in education. I also have a very strong feeling that we need to make sure that we have advanced the equity in education, the accessibility of programs to all students in our district. And so educational equity is something that I want to make sure that every student thrives in the district and that has equal access to all of the, the programs and extracurriculars. Also, the third, I think, would be to just make sure that we are treating everyone, including families, parents, students, teachers, staff members, with respect and dignity that they deserve, and make sure that we have that culture and climate where everyone is valued, everyone is welcome. And thank you.
Thank you so much. Rob, you're next.
I agree with Mary. Teacher retention, teacher pay is very important. We can't argue that we want better academics and not be willing to pay for it. We need to keep the teachers that we have that have the experience so that we can raise our test scores and teach our kids. I also believe in special education. Special education is not a room. It's not a place that kids go. Every kid in every classroom has the opportunity to take advantage of special education services, be that hearing impaired children, vision impaired children, children with learning deficiencies. And I want to make sure that those kids are represented on the board. Their families fight every day to get them services. And I think it's very important that, that they have a voice on that. And then I believe, in funding the extracurriculars, it's important to have those extra, the sports, arts, music, because that's what kids like to do. That's what kids go for. That's where their friends do.
Thank you.
We can't just look at this as a top-down management thing and cutting costs. It will lose students.
Thanks. Finally, Andrea.
Well, I said this in my opening remarks. My number 1 priority without question is academics. And how do we improve academics? We do that by setting specific, aggressive, measurable academic targets that we expect to be met within certain timeframes. And then holding the superintendent and ergo his or her staff accountable for achieving those results. As I also mentioned, safety is a top priority. Parents' rights, a lot of what we are teaching in schools at the moment is taking time away from our number one job, which is to educate. And finally, fiscal responsibility, spending money directly on academics, core subjects, spending it wisely, reducing overhead and waste, and giving taxpayers a well-deserved return on their investment.
Great. Thank you, Andrea.
Okay, how will you work to ensure that all SUSD students feel safe and feel like they belong at their school? And we'll start with Rob.
I've said this all along. It's important that every student, no matter how they identify, who they are, feels important, needed, seen, and heard. And I think that the inclusion, in our activities, understanding and supporting our children at all levels and whatever needs they might have, be it in social clubs, be it in the classroom, acknowledging who they are and what they want to be in life is very important. And I think that is part of teaching the whole child. You can't just teach them reading, writing, and arithmetic. They're not going to respond well. You need to treat the child as who they are, as a whole child, however they identify. And that's very important and I know our teachers do that already. They care for their students, and it's important. And the teachers that are most successful are the ones that acknowledge that their children are individuals and need that help.
Thank you.
Andrea?
Well, to me, there's two kinds of safety. There's physical safety and there's emotional safety. I think we have work to do on physical safety when we have a student in a high school with a gun in his backpack. So on that dimension, I would personally bring in an expert crew of people who are expert in physical safety threat assessment, have them work with our Scottsdale Police Department and identify for each particular school, here's a list of what we need to do and how much it's going to cost. The state has a $5 billion surplus, and I'd like to see us approach the state and say, give us funding for that. On the emotional side of the equation, it's takes a village to raise a student. First of all, you have to set the right culture within the organization, a caring culture, an acceptance culture. And it's a combination of teachers, curriculum, social workers, counselors, bus drivers,
Yes.
crossing guards. And I certainly agree with what Rob has said, that everyone needs to feel safe and welcome emotionally.
Thank you.
And Mary?
Well, sitting in the last board meeting, it was, very apparent to me. I've heard this at the doors when I go knocking and talking to voters and parents in the district, that there does appear to be a bullying problem in our school district, and we do need to address that. But I believe that the problem really lies in the division that we are in these days. But we need to really focus, like Andrea said, on the culture of our school district, but also making sure that we hold the administrators at each campus accountable to the culture and the atmosphere at each campus, and make sure that we are listening to students and making sure we take care of our students and take seriously every feeling that a kid has. If he or she is not feeling comfortable and accepted and welcome at their school, we need to know about it. We need to address that.
Thank you, Mary. Thanks. Our next question. As a governing board member, how will you work to represent all families in the district, regardless of whether they respect your personal politics or statements you have made in the past. Andrea, we're going to start with you.
Well, as I also said in my opening statement, you're exactly right. A governing board member has to listen to and respect all stakeholders, starting, of course, with students, parents, staff members, business people, community members, etc. I have, in my career worked with teams of people from all different departmental areas, been willing, as I said in my opening statement, to show up, to listen, I often find that when you come into those discussions, if you come with an open mind, that sometimes you find that you have more in common than you might have thought. And I'm a marketing person by heart. So to me, it starts first and foremost with listening to whoever the target, I would say, customer is, whether it's a parent, a community member, etc. Get their input and work together up from there.
Thanks so much, Andrea. Mary, you're up.
Well, speaking of target customer, really our kids are the target customer here. That is what we really need to focus on, and making sure that every kid in the district has a quality public education. I think families for sure have every part of their students' education. They have a huge part in it. And I think as a governing board, we really do need to encourage every parent to be active and engaged in their child's learning. There shouldn't be a parent that feels left out of this learning process. We need to make sure we are engaging families and building community. And that is what I've done for the last 25 years of my life, is build community. I think that would go a long way, open communication, and really treating everyone with compassion, which is, I think, sorely lacking in Scottsdale USD right now.
Thank you. Thanks, Mary. Rob?
It's about compassion, it's about empathy, and it's about the kids. And honestly, as a parent who has fought to get services for his child, I understand what other parents are going through. More than once, I've been on calls or Zoom calls with parents in our district who are lost. They've just gotten a diagnosis of autism or some other situation, and they don't know where to start. And you just have to break it down to this. I don't care who they are. I don't care where they work. I don't care what their political persuasion is. It's about their kid. And how can I help them get the best education for their child? So I would take it and take the opportunity to sit, close my mouth and listen, and try and help them by directing them to the right resources within the district.
Thank you, Rob.
Okay, next question. We'll start with Mary on this one. Do you support the district additional assistance or DAA override, and why or why not? Mary?
I definitely support the override. Strong schools equal a strong economy. They increase property values. Every person in the district, whether they have children in the district or not, stands to benefit from our schools. But the ones that really do benefit are our students. We're talking on average $4 extra a month per household on average. That is a bottle of water at a baseball game. I really do believe in offering robust programs for the students to engage learners, keep them active in their schools. The more connected they feel, the better that they do academically. It's proven. The money that we would get from the continuation, I'll just say that it is a continuation of the override, will go directly into classrooms. About 85% of it is scheduled to go right into classrooms and affect every kid in our district. That's important.
Thank you.
Okay, Rob?
Yes, I support the override. It's important for this money for the district to provide better academic results, to provide extracurricular activities, to service the child, the whole child, as I've said before. Kids go to school for more than just reading, writing, and arithmetic. They need other opportunities to learn and work with their fellow students. So this money goes to that. It provides for additional safety for the schools. It provides for safer facilities. It provides for the music for the teachers, art equipment for the art teachers, PE equipment for the coaches. Everything that the kid needs, all of it is provided. But here's the most important part. Our regular budget doesn't cover the technology that our students and our teachers need to teach. The laptops, the smart boards, that doesn't come out of the regular budget. That comes out of the override. And if we want to continue using good equipment, we're going to have to pay for it.
Thank you, Rob.
Thank you. Andrea?
Well, I do not support the override for two reasons at this stage of the game. One, again, goes back to my safety issue. First of all, this override does not technically expire for another year. So I would like to understand what costs we are facing to physically address safety in our campuses. It seems to me that we just have a knee-jerk reaction where, okay, we need money, we'll go ask the taxpayers. And the taxpayers of Scottsdale have been very generous in that. But I would like to see more of a 3-year plan or a 5-year plan. What are we going to need over time? Where's that money going to come from? The second issue I have with this particular override is we're asking taxpayers for 70% more money than the override that's expiring. Meantime, our enrollment is down 9.5%, potentially 10%. The number isn't in yet, to my knowledge, for this year.
Thank you.
Only 25% goes directly to academic needs. The
Thank
rest of it goes literally to things like better sound systems in the weight room and
Thanks,
esports. So I'd like to see money directed specifically to academics.
Thank you. Thank you.
And a plan.
Okay, I hate having to cut people off. We just want to be as fair as possible, not the best part of the job. We're going to shift gears a little bit for this next question. The district has experienced a large increase in public records requests recently. As a result, many hours are spent by SUSD administrators to analyze and oftentimes redact confidential information before providing answers. Do you have an opinion why there has been such an increase or what this information is being used for? Rob, we're going to start with you.
Well, I believe that you should be able to request information from the district, but I also believe that in this particular case, it's just a form of, and in certain levels from certain groups, it's a form of harassment. And so I would support charging for this information. I also support the transparency so that anyone be able to know who is making these requests. Actually, that's always been available. You just have to do a public information request for the public information requests. But ultimately, it's a vital function, but it's just being abused right now. I believe that we lost staff this past year just because of the frustration that they had with having to fulfill these things. It's dragging us down, it's costing the district money, and it's not helping our students at all. So I would support, continuing it, but being transparent, letting people know who's making these requests and for why, and then charging for them.
Thank you. Andrea, you're next.
I don't have an answer as to why the number of requests have gone up. I would hypothesize that it has a lot to do, unfortunately, with the turmoil that we've experienced with Mr. Greenberg. And hopefully that will calm down after his departure at the end of the year. I would not support charging people for that information. I think There is some information. I don't even support making everyone's name public. If you happen to be asking for information about your child or a particular teacher, I don't know that that should be public information. But it seems to me it's a cost of doing business. And we have a $463 million budget.
Thank you.
And perhaps needs to be streamlined and have, you know, some better technology around it. But I think it's a necessary function.
Thank you, Andrea. Mary, same question.
I think there are a lot of people with grievances and they're holding a grudge against the district for things that were decisions that were made last year by the board that they just didn't agree with. And it did cause some distrust of the district. And it's unfortunate, but I think we need to pull together as a community and get our act together. Stop, you know, I think that there should be transparency, but I think you should also respect the channels to go through. There are channels. If you have a question of what is being taught in a classroom, you first go and talk to the teacher. And then if you don't get a response from the teacher that satisfies you, you go to an administrator. And then if that's not satisfying you still, then you go to the superintendent. But I believe that it is causing some serious grief with our teachers and administrators, and it's got to stop.
Thank you, Mary.
Next question. Do you support the legislature revising or terminating the aggregate spending limit? And Andrea, we'll start with you.
From what I understand, I believe that I would support that. It's been in place for 40 years. It seems to me logic would say that the ceiling needs to be raised. However, as with almost anything, any kind of spending that I support, there comes more accountability. Being able, you know, more transparency with school site financials, with academic results. And just because the money is available does not mean the money has to be spent.
Okay, Mary?
Yes, I support waiving it and getting rid of it entirely. I hope that they do it this year, because we are expecting to be hit by that, hit that aggregate expenditure limit before, you know, the middle of the school year, basically. And we will face drastic cutbacks as a district if we don't get that raised for this year. But we definitely need to work to change that at the state, you know, legislative level. I do believe it has to go back to voters or have a supermajority to waive it. But I believe it was passed by the voters in 1980. So it does have to go back to voters to get lifted. But I do believe it is an archaic, you know, piece of legislation that will hamstring us going forward. It is just not good policy. And whoever decided in 1980 that there should be a cap on spending in education to educate our children and invest in our children, I'm very curious to how that even came about. I was a freshman in high school when it happened.
Thanks, Mary.
Rob?
Yes, I would like the aggregate expenditure limit repealed. Education is an investment, not an expense. And I believe that the districts need to have the tools and not this archaic limit. You know, every year that we come upon this, everyone has to scramble. Everyone has to figure out every district has to figure out what they might do if they don't get that money for the last month or two of the year. And it really distracts from the education of our children. We shouldn't have to be in crisis mode all the time. That's that's unfortunate. So I definitely do. And then one of the other things I want to just mention, because I'm looking at it right now, the budget for next year for the Scottsdale schools total is $232 million. M&O is 177 million. Of that money, 30 million comes from the federal government, 32 million is debt service for current bonds, and $42 million is going to be spent next year on bond projects.
Great. Thanks, Rob. So next question. As we all know, there are many good things happening in SUSD. How do you plan to leverage the district's existing strengths to expand on those successes? And Mary, we'll start with you for this question.
I don't think enough is being said about our district schools in terms of touting our successes and our students' successes. Students are more than just a number of proficiency. It does not give an accurate picture of what that child's full potential is. There are so many programs in our district that will attract students from, that are going possibly to other schools, other charters outside of our district. We need to make sure that Christine Harrington and her group are really touting those. And I know I've heard another candidate say that, social media marketing, that's such a waste. In this competitive environment of education, we need to market ourselves. We need to talk about the IB program. We need to talk about the STEAM program. We need to sell ourselves.
Great, thank you. Rob?
Agreed completely. All three of us are marketing or advertising people here. We all understand the importance of communicating the best of our Scottsdale schools. I grew up in this district. I know the people that have come from this and the successes that they've had. We put out great students, and it's good to get out there and say that to people. Look who we've produced. Look at the programs that we have. Look at these language immersion schools that we have, and really market it. We were without a marketing person for a long period of time, so I'm very happy that we do have marketing staff, and I agree with Mary. We just need to be more aggressive with our messaging. We need to get out first thing with preschoolers and kindergartners and talk to their parents and let them know why they need to attend Scottsdale schools, and then go from there. We know that we lose some kids to the charters from K through 5, but eventually parents bring their kids back to Scottsdale schools.
Thanks, Rob. Andrea?
Well, there are many good things that happen within SUSD. We're fortunate to have very dedicated teachers and staff. We have involved parents. We have a plethora of academic programs and all kinds of extracurricular activities. I started something on my website last year called Andrea's Accolades, just trying to remind people when something happened in the district, we should publicize that and we should celebrate that. Again, it comes to a culture, I would say probably driven in that case by principals. But again, I would also advocate, again, from my marketing background, pilot something. And if it works, expand it and provide incentives to the teachers to be creative and pilot something new and to celebrate something that works, and to expand something that works. And then they should be rewarded for that.
Thank you, Andrea.
Curriculum was ranked as the most important topic by the public who submitted questions for this forum. What role do you think parent input should play in curriculum decisions? And Rob, we'll start with you.
I think that they need to have input. Absolutely. I think that they have the opportunity to review the curriculum. They need to be able to, respond to things, have questions about things, and concern here, their concerns heard. But ultimately, we have to lean on the experts. We hire these teachers and these administrators with decades of experience. We need to trust them that they know what they're doing. They've taught thousands upon thousands of kids before. We should trust that they know how to teach our kids today.
Andrea?
Yes, I would say I agree with what Rob has said, that parents should certainly have input into our curriculum. But there comes a point at which the ultimate decision and the ultimate responsibility is through the administration. And we are not experts in pedagogy. We have to look to the teachers and the principals and ultimately district administrators and superintendent to select the curriculum. And it's our responsibility to live with it and to generate or not generate results. And if we don't generate results, then we need to revise and look at something different. But fundamentally, we are the experts in how to teach, and it's our responsibility to teach. But certainly, as in everything, we should have stakeholder input.
Okay, thank you. Mary?
So I have a perspective from Texas schools. Parents there were no committees to review curriculum. We never had an opportunity to look at books before they got put on our students' desks. So when I found here in SUSD that our district does openly ask for parents to serve on those curriculum materials, supplemental materials committees, and serve with teachers and administrators on those committees, I think that we do have parent input, and we should be grateful for that. And that is, I applaud that. However, I think there's a fine line. There are some parents that want to control curriculum, control what it is that our teachers can even say in the classroom and what our kids can even read in their, in their libraries. And there is, that is a precarious line that we have to address, and we all have to come together as a community. But I believe that the majority of parents, honestly, in our district I would hope that they would believe that our teachers should be not censored.
Thanks, Mary. Not surprising, school safety was ranked as the second most important topic by the public who submitted questions for this forum. How will you ensure consistency across schools in terms of safety policies and rules, including parental access to campuses? Andrea, we're going to start with you.
Well, as I mentioned before, there's two aspects to safety. There's the physical safety of the building itself. And for that, I would look to experts. As I mentioned, there are plenty of consulting companies for whom that's their specialty, and working closely with Scottsdale Police. Then there's programmatic, and that in fact worked very well at Arcadia, where the see something, say something programming that we have in place was effective, and 2 students reported the fact that this other young man had a gun in his backpack. But to the consistency, that's a management issue. And we certainly, there's $50 million in the new budget, state budget, to provide a school resource officer on every campus. We certainly should take advantage of that. We need, again, culturally to hold the principals accountable for the policy that is set by the governing board.
Thank you. Mary?
Well, I was going to mention that see something, say something policy, or, the communication between, our administrators to families and students, that worked. Nothing is foolproof, not even an SRO. I think every single one of us needs to take security at our schools seriously. We all have a stake in this. These are our kids, these are our teachers, their lives are at stake, and we need to make sure that we are following the guidelines that say the SROs are talking to all parents, and I mean all teachers, to lock the doors, because They learned through Evaldi what happened there. He went through and jiggled doors, and he got into one unlocked door. I was at an event where a teacher actually questioned the SRO about that policy, and it was very much reinforced by that SRO.
Thank you, Mary. Rob, same question.
Any suggestion that the Scottsdale School District doesn't take security seriously is irresponsible. If you spend time on the campuses, if you try and take your kid into the school, you see how the district schools are built. You see the new schools are built and how they're secured. You see how some of the other campuses like Cheyenne have been retrofitted for security. And you understand that the district takes this thing very seriously. We have had a threat assessment already. There's a report out on it. It would be great for you to read it, Andrea. I would suggest people actually look into what has been done before we as a group start talking about what should be done. And the fact of the matter is the Scottsdale Police, the Phoenix Police, the Paradise Valley Police take seriously the safety of our kids on our campuses. And we need to work with them. They've already done the threat assessment. They already have made recommendations on what we should do. And I think we should do those.
Can I respond since Rob mentioned my name?
Yeah, you have 30 seconds.
Okay. Obviously, there are holes in our system, literally, because we had a young man with a gun inside the school building. I spoke to the director of security who just recently retired, and he told me that they were planning to do an updated threat assessment. It got put on the back shelf because of COVID, but it was something that he hoped the new security director would follow up and do.
Thanks, Andrea. Paul?
Okay, the topic of teachers and school leaders was ranked third, the third most important topic by people who submitted questions for this forum. There is a teacher and support staff shortage in Arizona, in the nation. And how do you plan to handle staffing challenges that SUSD is currently facing and will face during your term if you're elected? And Mary, we'll start with you.
Well, I think the first thing we need to do is make sure that we respect our teachers, and that will go a long way for them to feel teachers, not just teachers, but paraprofessionals, teaching assistants, everyone from that has a hand in educating our children. They need our support now more than ever before, and really make sure that they have everything that they need, all the tools in their toolbox to bring, a quality education to our children. But our school is not alone, our district is not alone in this teacher and staffing shortage. It is an economic issue throughout the United States. But I think more than anything, to make sure that our teachers feel valued and respected and not targeted would go a long way to retaining teachers and paying them what they deserve.
Thank you.
The professionals that they are. Thank you.
Thank you. Rob.
I believe teachers want to teach in the Scottsdale School District. I think this is just as Mary said, it's a respect issue. It's a pay issue. Now, we hear the statistic, there are 2,200 open certified positions in the state of Arizona. A few weeks ago, I asked the question, I was told there was 56 openings in Scottsdale schools. Now, 56 in needing 1,200 teachers in our district doesn't seem like a lot, but that still means that there are classrooms without professional teachers in them. There were 24 of those positions were in special education. 12 of those current positions at the time were being filled by unqualified substitute teachers. And I say that just in that they don't have the experience in special education that you really need. So, in this particular case, I believe that, every teacher needs to be paid, regardless whether in the Scottsdale School District or elsewhere. But I do believe that people want to teach here, and if we just are aggressive and pay better, we'll be able to fill those gaps.
You're
Andrea?
Well, certainly pay is an issue. There's no question about that. I think we also have to recognize that there are certain positions that have higher than average retention issues. Math teachers, science teachers, special ed teachers, as Rob just mentioned, and perhaps they need to have, first of all, they need to have additional resources in terms of help and support, and but perhaps they need to have additional pay as well. I think there's an opportunity here for community partnerships, which is something that I have a great deal of experience in doing, going out and finding businesses in Scottsdale who would be willing to potentially sponsor a classroom or a school and provide employees as volunteers. The other thing that's always mentioned, though, is it's the culture created by the principal. And that has a great deal of importance as well.
Thank you. Again, sorry to cut you off. As we all know, there are many options when it comes to schools in our community. How will you work to ensure SUSD is competitive among the private and charter schools? Rob, we're going to start with you.
Again, I fall back on the marketing aspect of my life, in that you have to find out what the other schools are offering. You have to go and get the marketing material. You have to talk to people that are sending their kids there. You have to find out what the draw is for those people, for those institutions that you're competing with. And then you take that and you analyze it and you figure out what exactly you might need to change in your location. But at the same time, I think we go back to what we've said before, is that we were not being aggressive in our marketing message about the Scottsdale School District. I believe that we do provide an excellent education for all grades, and we need to be better about communicating that. But I do believe in an assessment of who we're competing against, and then having a discussion of how we can improve our services to those students.
Great. Thanks, Rob. Andrea?
Well, again, to me, the first thing you do is you talk to the people who are not coming to our district, and you find out why they're not. There have been some exit surveys done, but I think there are more sophisticated ways in which to do that through focus groups and maybe in-depth interviews, et cetera. Certainly one of those issues, however, is academic performance. We tend to do pretty well in the elementary schools. We've got about 70% of proficiency in elementary. It drops off to about 50% in middle school, and it drops off to about 40% in high school. So I'm a believer in competition. I think competition raises all boats. And the fact that we're losing, in my opinion, we only have 50% of the eligible kids in Scottsdale coming to our public school district, says that we need to do a better job. And I would say we need to do a better job first and foremost with academics.
Thank you, Mary. Or I'm sorry, Andrea. Mary, you're next.
Well, I believe in competition, but I also believe in a fair fight. And I don't believe that the competitive environment we're in right now is a fair fight. And it looks like we're going into, possibly with the universal voucher expansion, that could get even uglier. So we really need to all come together and make sure that we save our public schools. We need to invest in them. We need to offer innovative programs, things that we can compete with. But of course, that does come down to money. So we would have to take a very hard look at what it is we have, what we could part with if it's not working, and make those adjustments in order to compete. It might just come down to that. And I would certainly focus on the programs and the curriculum that is really most important to our students and our teachers, valued by our community, before that ever gets on the chopping block.
Thanks, Mary.
Mm-hmm.
SUSD spends hundreds of millions of taxpayer dollars every year. What qualifications and experience do you possess for managing the district's extensive and complex finances. And Andrea, we'll start with you.
Okay. Well, this is right up my alley. First of all, it starts with my academic credentials. I have an MBA with a double major in marketing and finance from the University of Chicago, which is consistently ranked as the #1 graduate business school in the country. I spent 5 years initially as a banker for BMO Harris Bank in Chicago, where I analyzed financial statements of companies in order to make loans to them up to $30 million of the bank's assets. So I'm quite experienced in understanding what current ratios are and what we need for liquidity and overhead and cost of goods sold, et cetera. Finally, as I mentioned, I've run $200 and $300 million businesses. I had advertising budgets alone, and this was 30 some years ago, that were $40 million just in advertising. So finance is my expertise.
Okay, thank you. Mary?
Well, I'm going to come out and admit I'm not a finance person. I have handled budgets. I was an account manager. Arizona Lottery was one of my biggest accounts. It was the largest account in the state at the time. I believe in trusting, and not trusting necessarily, that's not the right word, but working collaboratively with the CFO and experts, asking a lot of questions, digging in, but you are one board member out of 5. It's a together project. You're not managing a budget by yourself, but definitely doing your research, asking a lot of questions from a lot of people to make sure that you're spending those resources correctly and responsibly. And
Thank you.
thank you.
Thank
Rob?
I think it goes down to making sure that the staff, the administration is being held to account, and that we hire the professionals that we need. I'm not assuming that we don't have them now, that can manage the finances, because that's really their job. It's not our job as a board member. We have to have the experience to understand and ask the questions that need be, but our actual work is not going to be necessary, because that's why we hire the experts. We listen to them, we seek and ask questions of the public, and then we give the superintendent the guidance that he needs to make decisions. But ultimately, we are just one of 5 people, and we will guide them. I think every day I work currently, I have a job in, executive management, and I'm on the board of the Arizona Center for Disability Law, a multi-million-dollar law firm. And we have to make decisions every day about what cases that we can cover and what we can't. And we have to do that by listening to people and understanding the results that we're going to get out of it. Education is an investment, not an expense, and we have to deal with it that way.
Thank you, Rob. We're going to shift gears again with this next question. Do you think that school board races have become politicized? If so, is this good or bad? Mary, we'll start with you.
Yes. Unfortunately, they have been politicized. I would like it to not be politicized, but in the state that we're in, especially when we have state legislators looking up at teachers in a balcony of the Capitol, calling them educational terrorists for just standing up for their students and for themselves to earn a decent wage commensurate with their experience and credentials, and to offer that great experience, great educational value to our students. We need to come together as a community and get our act together. This is not about vaxxing, masking. This is educating our children.
Thank you, Mary. Rob, same question.
Yeah, I agree with that. A lot of the times I always hear that this race is supposed to be nonpartisan, but that, doesn't acknowledge the fact that it is not apolitical. Politics is about people. It's about how we as people help and serve each other. So it does get to be political and it gets to be personal. The problem with it right now is it's getting to be way too personal. The three of us on this call right now were attacked over the past few days, and it's greatly unfortunate that it happened. And I'm sorry that it happened to the two other people on this call. And so I've condemned what has happened to my co-candidates. And I really wish that we could back off and listen and discuss what the children need in this district. And that's, that's my belief on that.
Thank you. Andrea, same question.
Absolutely, it's politicized. And my belief is that education should be a nonpartisan issue, that every adult member of a community has a moral obligation to our youth to see that they receive the academic and life skills they need to succeed when they graduate from high school. And that to me is not a Democratic point of view. It's not a Republican point of view. It's not a libertarian point of view. But unfortunately, first of all, politics has crept into our schools, and that's inappropriate. No student should ever be able to understand the ideology of a political ideology of a teacher or staff member. And as Rob mentioned, the proof that it's politicized, anybody can see on the street corner this weekend.
Thank you.
And that's unfortunately come from certain supporters of with a certain political bent.
Thank you, Andrea. Paul?
The programs and classes available at each campus vary considerably. How will you ensure that students throughout the district have equal opportunities? And Rob, we'll start with you.
I believe in the Coronado Promise. I think that we need to focus on the Coronado learning community and building it up so that we can add additional programs within Coronado and the feeder schools to help the kids in those areas. They're going to be the ones that need special programs that might not be available in other campuses. That being said, I believe that all of our campuses, are fortunate and need to have the programs that show that we're a diverse community. I like the language immersion schools. I just think right now that the Coronado campus and the Coronado learning community is unfortunately in need of more service by the district than maybe some of the other learning communities.
Andrea?
I would look at it as different target audiences. What's needed at Desert Mountain High School is probably different than what's needed at Coronado High School. And what's needed by, one group of students is different than what's needed by another group of students. So I would look at it as serving different target audiences as opposed to being homogeneous. I think the approach is to be heterogeneous. And if something is offered at a school that a particular student doesn't have at their school, then we need to figure out a way to make that available to them. I looked at the list of CTE courses and I see that some of them are available at some high schools and some of them aren't. But to me, it comes down to really micro level of understanding of different groups, and let's provide what's needed for that group.
Thank you. Thanks, Andrea.
Thank you. Mary?
I strongly believe that every child in our district deserves equal access to high quality public education, regardless of their zip code. I do believe with 10 of our schools being a Title I schools, which is a indicator of poverty, I don't believe it's just in the Coronado learning community that we have kids struggling. We have homeless youth in our district. We have foster children in our district and a lot of low-income kids. So we need to make sure that we are addressing that. But as Andrea said, Coronado does have only, I think, 5 CTE programs, whereas Chaparral just up the street has, I think, 10 or 11. We need to make sure that we are bringing more programming to, equal throughout the district. And find ways, maybe those in the Chaparral community can come down to Coronado community for those CTE programs, and they likely have more flexible schedule maybe, or even transportation that those in the South do not. So we need to address those problems.
Appreciate it.
Mhm.
Now you can all take a collective sigh. This is our final question. Is SUSD leadership off track? What does good board and district communication look like to you? And what changes would you advocate for? Andrea, we're going to start with you.
The main change that I would look for, and we have seen a minor amount of progress in this direction, although I don't think it's anywhere near enough. And that is, as I said earlier, specific, measurable, aggressive academic targets that we expect to be met within certain timeframes. And the board only oversees one person, that's the superintendent. And that takes place as part of his or her performance pay plan. And then it also takes place as part of the district strategic plan. So I think that we have not historically, at least, in recent history, done a very good job at holding the superintendent accountable for to be aggressive and what our expectations are of him or her. And we need to set that in place, and that needs to be aggressive and measurable.
Thanks, Andrea. Mary, you're next.
Okay, I'm sorry. The 5-member board that we have in place right now did approve of our superintendent's performance. I don't see any reason why they would be off the mark on that. There's always room for improvement. And I would, as a board member, make sure that I held the superintendent accountable and make sure that those targets were being met. But I do not believe that we are off track. I think we are heading in the right direction. And really, I think that the communication between the board and the public, I do believe that the board members should be accessible to the public, not in board meetings. Board meetings are to conduct business. They are to hear what people have to say and then address problems as, punt that over to the superintendent to address.
Thank you, Mary. Finally, you, Rob.
I think Dr. Menzel is doing a good job, and I also think he's doing a good job under unusually difficult circumstances. He walked into a situation and, between funding loss, the state legislature pulling back on things, between COVID, between unaffordable housing in the district, causing, some effect to our student population. He's been juggling a lot of problems. And I think he's done an excellent job. And I believe that this board has done an excellent job in guiding him and advising him on what needs to be done. Again, just as Mary said, we wanted the best for our kids, and we can always improve. But I think we have to look at the past few years under the right microscope and understand all of the factors that have affected us in the past few years and realize that it's been an unusually difficult situation to work through, and give Dr. Menzel the credit he deserves for guiding us through this time.
Thanks, Rob.
Thank you to the 3 of you for your responses. We'll now move into the 1-minute closing statements in the reverse order of the opening statements. So Rob, you may begin.
Thank you for hosting us tonight. I appreciate your time to discuss these issues that affect you as parents, our teachers, our district, and most of all, our students. I see no greater constituency than that of our parents. I find it concerning that Mrs. Carney and Mrs. Werner couldn't find the time to address this group. I appreciate our sponsors for hosting this event. I thank Mrs. Keck and Mrs. Gaudio for attending, and I ask all of you for your vote and support for my campaign. And I look forward to serving you, the parents, on the Scottsdale School Board. Thank you.
Andrea, you can begin your closing statement.
Okay, as I said before, academics, and I'm going to disagree with Mary a little bit here. We have 40% of our 3rd through 8th graders who are not at grade level. And in the new performance plan that the board just put together for Dr. Menzel, the board put in place that he needs to increase that by 3%. Safety, parental rights, and fiscal responsibility, these are my priorities. I'm willing to show up, to listen, be open-minded, and respectfully discuss. I have the skill set to manage all of the issues the new board will face, not just one particular issue. I believe education is a nonpartisan issue. I'm not managed or endorsed by any political organizations, as all of the other candidates are. They say you're doing something right when both sides condemn you. I'm often attacked by both the left and the right. It happened again this week, as we said, with some rabid right supporters defaming all 3 of us. I would be honored to work as a partner with you, and what the heck, vote for Keck.
Thanks.
Mary, you may begin your closing statement.
Well, as a parent of 2 very successful adults, I understand that every parent wants to see high proficiency in math and reading. I don't take that lightly, and we always can use room for improvement, and that would definitely be my focus as well. That I think is almost an unsaid responsibility of a school board member. But also, as a school board member, we need to respect all students. All students belong, all staff, all teachers, everyone should feel welcome and a sense of belonging in our district. I will strive to cultivate that safe and inclusive environment for all students, staff, and community members to feel valued, respected, seen, and heard. I hope I have earned your vote. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all. I just want to give you all a round of applause. I wish we were live with an audience that could clap for all of you, but you just get Paul and I. I do want to remind the at-home audience that this forum has been recorded and it will be available online at the Scottsdale Parent Council website and on YouTube.
And I would just like to add my thank you to the 3 candidates and to the audience. And this will wrap up our program today.
Thank you.
Thank you, Paul.
Thank you.